I never thought I would find myself in this position. 10 years into my MMA career, and here I was staring at my wife Sophia's text messages to a man named Jake. Not just any Jake, but Jake Harrison, the very guy I was scheduled to fight in 2 weeks in the most important match of my career. 6 years of marriage, and I thought we had something special, something real. But those messages told a different story. A story of betrayal, secret rendezvous, and lies that cut deeper than any blow I had ever taken in the octagon. Before I tell you how I discovered my wife's betrayal and what happened in that ring, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to fight for what's right in your life. Growing up in the south side of Chicago taught me to fight for everything. Nothing came easy in our neighborhood, and from the age of 12 I knew I wanted something better than what I saw around me. My father worked 2 jobs, breaking his back at a factory during the day and as a security guard at night. He was my first hero, a man who never complained, just put one foot in front of the other and did what needed to be done for his family. When I discovered mixed martial arts at 15, it was like finding a piece of myself I never knew was missing. The discipline, the strategy, the raw physical challenge, it all clicked for me. I poured everything into training, scraping together money for gym fees by working at a local grocery store after school. By 21, I had turned pro, fighting in small regional promotions for purses that barely covered my expenses. That was when I met Sophia. We were both students at Northern Illinois University. Me on an athletic scholarship, taking classes part-time while pursuing my fighting career, and her studying business marketing. She was beautiful, smart, and seemed genuinely impressed by my dedication, rather than put off by my bruises and the time I spent training. When most girls would have walked away from a boyfriend who could rarely afford proper dates and spent most of his free time at the gym, Sophia stayed. For 6 years, she supported my dream, celebrating the victories and nursing my wounds after defeats. When I finally got signed to a major promotion 3 years ago, she was the first person I called. We got married the following year, using my first significant purse money for a modest ceremony with our closest friends and family. We bought a small house in the suburbs of Chicago, nothing fancy, but it was ours. We talked about starting a family once I had secured enough financial stability through fighting. My daily routine revolved around training. 5 hours at the gym, 6 days a week. Strength conditioning in the mornings, technical work in the afternoons, and sparring sessions 3 times weekly. Sophia seemed to understand the demands of a fighter's life, never complaining about the rigorous schedule or the weeks I spent at training camps. At least that's what I thought. The championship fight against Jake Harrison was the opportunity I had been working toward my entire career. At 31, I knew my window for reaching the top of the sport was getting smaller. Jake was younger, 27, with an undefeated record and a reputation for vicious knockouts. The betting odds had me as a significant underdog, but my coach Terry believed I had the technical skills to neutralize Jake's power. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs. Sophia had become increasingly distant over the preceding months. She had started going out more with her friends, coming home late, smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't mine. Her phone had suddenly acquired a password, something we had never done before in our relationship. When I asked about these changes, she would deflect, saying I was being paranoid or too focused on my upcoming fight. 2 weeks before the fight, I needed to check my email for some contract details from my manager. My laptop was charging in the bedroom, and Sophia's was right there on the coffee table. I didn't think twice about using it. We had always shared everything. As soon as I opened the laptop, notifications from her messaging app popped up on the screen. Jake, can't wait to see you tomorrow. Hotel at noon. Jake, thinking about what you were wearing last time. Jake, after I beat your husband, we won't have to sneak around anymore. My hands started shaking so badly I could barely scroll through the conversation history. But I forced myself to read everything, each message driving the knife deeper. They had been seeing each other for 3 months, starting right after Jake and I had been announced as opponents. The messages were explicit, detailed, leaving no doubt about the physical nature of their relationship. When Sophia came home that night, I confronted her immediately. She denied everything at first, claiming Jake was harassing her with unwanted attention. When I showed her the messages I had read, her story changed. It was just texting a stupid flirtation that got out of hand. She swore they had never met physically. I wanted to believe her, needed to believe her, but the knot in my stomach told me otherwise. That night after she had gone to bed, I sat alone in our basement home gym, a place that had always been my sanctuary. For the first time since I started fighting, I cried. Not just because of the betrayal, but because of who it was with. Jake Harrison wasn't just any opponent. He was now a man who had been intimate with my wife while I was training to fight him. The personal and professional humiliation merged into a pain unlike anything I had ever experienced. I decided not to confront Sophia further right away. If I was going to discover the full extent of her betrayal, I needed to be strategic. The next morning I apologized for overreacting, telling her I believed her explanation that it was just inappropriate texting. The relief on her face was immediate, but there was something else there too. A flicker of contempt that I had accepted her story so easily. Over the next 3 days I became a detective in my own marriage. While Sophia was at work, I used her laptop again, this time checking her cloud storage. What I found confirmed my worst fears. Dozens of photos exchanged between them, including several taken in hotel rooms. In some, I could recognize the distinctive decor of the Hampton Inn near our house. Based on the timestamps, many of these meetings had occurred while I was away at training camps preparing for previous fights. I also discovered that Jake had first approached Sophia at one of my matches 6 months earlier. He had recognized her from social media photos on my accounts and deliberately sought her out. From what I could piece together from their messages, he had pursued her aggressively, initially framing it as friendship before escalating. The worst revelation came when I reached out to Marcus, the husband of Sophia's close friend Alicia. Marcus had always been straight with me, and when I asked if he knew anything about Sophia seeing someone else, his uncomfortable silence told me everything before he even spoke. "Man, I'm sorry," he finally said. "Alicia made me promise not to get involved. She said it was just a phase Sophia was going through, that she would come to her senses." "How many of our friends know?" I asked. "Most of the wives," he admitted. "Sophia hasn't exactly been discreet. Taking calls during dinner parties, showing up late with weak excuses. Everyone's been talking." That night I checked Jake's social media accounts. There were several posts with thinly veiled references that now made perfect sense. Comments about taking everything from his next opponent and photos captioned with lines like "enjoying the spoils before victory." I had scrolled past these posts before thinking they were just standard pre-fight trash talk. Now they made me physically sick. I continued my charade with Sophia, pretending I had accepted her story while gathering more evidence. One evening, I deliberately told her I was going to be at the gym until late. Instead, I parked down the block from our house and returned on foot an hour later. Through the partially open window of our bedroom, I heard Sophia on the phone. He believed me. Can you believe that she was saying, laughing softly, "After the fight is over, we can figure out next steps"? No, I just need to play the supportive wife for 2 more weeks. Yes, I will be there. I will try to sit where you can see me. My training began to suffer. Terry, my coach of 8 years, noticed immediately. "Your head's not in this, Virgil," he said after a particularly poor sparring session where I had taken shots I would normally have easily avoided. "Whatever's going on, you either need to fix it or compartmentalize until after the fight. Harrison will eat you alive if you show up like this." I considered pulling out of the fight. Claiming an injury would be easy enough. But as I drove home that evening, something else occurred to me. Jake had taken this fight specifically to humiliate me. He wanted to beat me in the ring while sleeping with my wife behind my back. Withdrawing would be giving him exactly what he wanted. The final straw came when I discovered Sophia had been using our joint savings account to buy gifts for Jake. A $600 watch designer, clothes, even first-class plane tickets for a weekend getaway, disguised as a girls' trip on our calendar. Money we had been saving for a down payment on a bigger house, possibly for the family we had talked about starting. At that point, I had a decision to make. Let this situation destroy me, or use it as fuel. I chose the latter. The morning after discovering Sophia had been spending our savings on Jake, I hit rock bottom. I found myself sitting alone in my car outside the gym at 5 in the morning, a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the passenger seat. I had never been a drinker, especially during training camps, but the pain had become unbearable. For a moment, I considered calling my manager and pulling out of the fight. Instead, I put the bottle away and walked into the empty gym. Terry arrived an hour later to find me pounding the heavy bag already drenched in sweat. "Something's wrong," he said. It wasn't a question. And it's not just pre-fight jitters. Terry had been more than a coach to me for the past 8 years. He had been a mentor, sometimes even a father figure. After a long moment of silence, I told him everything. The affair, Jake's involvement, the humiliation. Terry listened, without interrupting his weathered face, giving away nothing. When I finished, he simply nodded. "This changes nothing about our strategy," he said finally. "But it changes everything about your motivation. Pain like this, it can break you, or it can become the most powerful fuel you'll ever have. The choice is yours." That afternoon, I met with my friend Aaron, an attorney who specialized in family law. I laid out the situation and asked about my options. "If you want to divorce her, you have more than enough grounds," Aaron said. "The text messages, photos, and financial records create a clear case of infidelity. Illinois is a no-fault state, but these factors can influence property division, especially the misuse of joint funds. I want to wait until after the fight," I told him. "Can you prepare everything so we can file immediately afterward?" Aaron agreed, and we spent 2 hours going through financial documents and beginning the process of separating our assets. I made sure he had copies of all the evidence I had collected. Back at the gym, Terry and I developed a new training strategy. Jake was known for his aggressive style and knockout power, but watching footage of his previous fights revealed defensive weaknesses that appeared when he overextended. He had never faced a fighter with my level of technical wrestling, and his ground game was relatively untested. "He will try to end this early," Terry said as we studied the footage. "His cardio has been questionable in fights that go beyond the second round. If you can weather the early storm and take him into deep water, you can break him." My training transformed. The pain and anger became focused, controlled energy. Every morning I visualized not just winning the fight, but systematically dismantling Jake Harrison, taking away his confidence, his swagger, and ultimately his consciousness. Every afternoon I drilled the techniques that would exploit his weaknesses. Every evening I worked with a sports psychologist. Terry recommended learning to channel my emotions without becoming reckless. At home I moved my things into the guest bedroom, telling Sophia I needed better sleep leading up to the fight. I kept conversations brief and practical, focusing solely on household matters. The confusion on her face gradually turned to concern as she realized I was emotionally withdrawing, but she never directly confronted me about the change. 10 days before the fight, I overheard Sophia on the phone again, this time sounding worried. "He's different," she was saying. "It's like he knows something." "No, I haven't said anything, and he hasn't asked. I don't know if I can go through with this anymore." I felt a momentary hope that perhaps she was reconsidering, that maybe our marriage could be saved after all. That hope died the next morning when I checked her messages again and found she had simply moved their conversations to a different app. The pre-fight press conference came 4 days before the bout. Jake played his usual role, cocky, dismissive of my abilities, promising a highlight reel knockout. Then he went off script. "After Saturday, Virgil is going to lose everything that matters to him," he said, smirking directly at me. "His ranking, his relevance, and maybe even things closer to home." The reporters didn't catch the meaning behind his words, but I did. It took every ounce of self-control not to leap across the stage and attack him right there. Instead, I maintained my composure, stating simply that I would let my performance in the octagon speak for itself. "Was that some kind of personal dig?" a reporter asked me afterward. "Jake talks a lot," I replied with a shrug. "On Saturday night, we'll see if he can back it up when it counts." The night before the fight, I found the final piece of evidence that cemented my decision. A draft email in Sophia's account addressed to Jake. "When this is over, I want us to go away together. I've been putting money aside. Virgil never has to know." In that moment, any lingering doubt about my course of action vanished. Win or lose tomorrow, my marriage was over. The morning of the fight, I woke at 5 a.m. After a surprisingly restful sleep, the uncertainty was gone. I knew exactly what needed to be done, both in the octagon and in my personal life. While making my pre-fight meal of oatmeal and egg whites, I checked Sophia's phone one last time. There it was, a message to Jake sent at 2 a.m. Good luck today. Cannot wait to celebrate with you after. She had typed this while lying next to me in bed, pretending to be the supportive wife. The audacity almost made me laugh. Terry picked me up at 11, and we drove to the arena in comfortable silence. The promotional team had arranged for fighters' families to have special seating near the octagon. As we passed through the VIP entrance, I spotted Sophia already there, checking her makeup in a compact mirror. She was wearing a new dress I had never seen before, her hair styled differently than usual. "You good?" Terry asked, noticing my gaze. "Never better," I replied, and meant it. The fighters' locker room was a hive of activity. Commission officials, cutmen preparing materials, my cornermen reviewing last-minute strategy. I went through my warm-up routine mechanically, my mind clear and focused. When the production assistant came to inform us it was time for the walkout, Terry gave my shoulders a firm squeeze. "Remember the game plan," he said. "Let him exhaust himself in the first round. Establish your jab circle away from his power hand. Take him down in the second, if the opportunity presents itself. Break his will in the third." The arena was sold out, 16,000 fans creating a wall of noise as I made my walk to the octagon. I spotted Sophia in the crowd, not in the family section, but several rows back, sitting between two women I recognized as her friends. Our eyes met briefly, but I felt nothing. No anger, no pain, no love, just emptiness. Jake was already in the octagon when I arrived, bouncing on the balls of his feet, looking confident and dangerous. As we faced off in the center for the referee's instructions, he leaned in close. "After I knock you out, I'm going home with your wife," he whispered, his breath hot against my ear. I said nothing, my face betraying nothing. The first round went exactly as Terry had predicted. Jake came out aggressively, throwing heavy hooks and overhand rights, designed to end the fight early. I stayed disciplined, using lateral movement, keeping my jab in his face, avoiding the power shots. When he managed to corner me against the cage, I clinched, nullifying his striking advantage and making him carry my weight. By the end of the round, his breathing had become labored, his movements slightly less explosive. "He's getting frustrated," Terry said in the corner. "Now he's going to try to prove something. This is where he gets sloppy. Be patient." The second round began with Jake charging forward, abandoning the calculated aggression of the first round for wild looping punches. I slipped under a particularly reckless haymaker and secured my first takedown of the fight, landing in side control. From there, I worked methodically, transitioning to mount, then taking his back when he turned defensively. "She moans my name," he hissed, as I controlled him on the ground. A desperate attempt to break my concentration. I responded by sinking in my hooks, deeper, establishing complete dominance. When the round ended, the momentum had clearly shifted. The crowd sensed it, the energy in the arena changing. "One more round like that, and he's done," Terry said. "His cardio is failing, and he's fighting emotional now. Stay technical, make him pay for every mistake." The third round was where everything came together. Jake was noticeably slower, his famous power diminished by fatigue. I began to pick him apart on the feet, landing clean combinations, mixing in takedowns to keep him guessing. Midway through the round, I caught him with a perfectly timed right cross as he lunged forward, sending him staggering backward. I followed with a left hook to the body that made him wince in pain. The finish came with 47 seconds left in the round. Jake, desperate and exhausted, attempted a telegraphed overhand right. I slipped to the outside, countered with a straight right that connected flush on his chin, then followed with a left hook as he stumbled. He went down hard, flat on his back. The referee jumped in immediately, waving off the fight before I could land any follow-up strikes. The crowd erupted as I climbed to the top of the cage, emotion finally breaking through my composed exterior. Not because I had beaten Jake Harrison, but because I had beaten back the doubt and pain that had threatened to consume me. The post-fight interview in the octagon was brief and professional. I thanked my team, acknowledged Jake as a worthy opponent, and dedicated the win to the fans who had supported me throughout my career. I made no mention of what I knew about him and my wife. This victory was mine, and I wouldn't taint it with public drama. When I returned to the locker room, my phone was flooded with congratulatory messages. One from Sophia. "Amazing fight, baby. So proud of you coming to the locker room now." I showered quickly and changed into street clothes before she arrived. When she burst in, she threw her arms around me, playing the role of the ecstatic, supportive wife perfectly. "You were incredible," she gushed, eyes wide, with what appeared to be genuine admiration. "The way you finished him. I have never seen anything like it." I gently disentangled myself from her embrace. "We need to talk," I said quietly. "Not here. At home." The drive back was tense. Sophia chattering nervously about the fight, my performance, the after-party some of the other fighters were attending. I responded with monosyllables, my mind already on what was to come. When we arrived home, I went straight to my home office and returned with a folder containing printouts of her messages with Jake bank statements, showing the money she had spent on him and photos from their hotel rendezvous. "What is all this?" she asked, though her suddenly pale face suggested she already knew. "Everything," I replied, simply placing the folder on the coffee table between us. "I know about you and Jake. I have, for the last 2 weeks. I know about the texts, the hotels, the money from our savings, the plans to leave after the fight." Sophia stared at the folder, then back at me. For a moment, she seemed ready to deny everything again. Then, her expression shifted. "It wasn't what you think," she began, her voice taking on a defensive edge. "Jake pursued me for months. I was lonely with you, gone at training camps all the time. He made me feel wanted, desired." "Stop," I interrupted. "I'm not interested in explanations or excuses. I've already spoken with an attorney. The divorce papers will be filed Monday morning." Her strategy changed instantly. The defensiveness vanished, replaced by desperation. Tears welled up in her eyes as she moved toward me. "Please, Virgil," she pleaded, reaching for my hands. "It was a mistake. A terrible, stupid mistake. I love you. We can work through this." I stepped back, maintaining distance between us. "I've already packed a suitcase with your essentials," I said, gesturing toward the hallway where I had left her luggage. "You can stay with one of your friends tonight. I'll arrange for you to collect the rest of your things while I'm not here." "You're kicking me out?" she asked, disbelief in her voice. "After 6 years of marriage. This is my home too." "The mortgage is in my name," I replied calmly. "And given the circumstances, I think it's best you leave tonight." Sophia's tears turned to anger. "You planned all this," she hissed. "You knew before the fight and said nothing. You used it to motivate yourself. That's cold, Virgil. Colder than sleeping with my opponent while I trained to fight him." I asked, my voice still level. "Colder than spending our savings on gifts for him. Colder than planning to leave me after he beat me." She had no answer for that. After a moment of tense silence, she collected her suitcase and purse. At the door, she turned back. "This isn't over," she said. "You'll regret this when you cool down. And I'm entitled to half of everything, including your fight purses." "We'll see," I replied, closing the door behind her. That night alone in our house, for the first time in years, I experienced a strange mixture of emotions. The vindication of having defeated Jake so decisively in the octagon provided a certain satisfaction. But underneath lay a profound sadness for the death of something I had believed in completely. My marriage, my partnership with Sophia, the future we had planned together. The next morning I met with Aaron to finalize the divorce filing. The good news, he told me, is that the evidence of her infidelity and misuse of joint funds strengthens our position significantly. The bad news is that divorces are rarely clean or quick, especially when there's resentment involved. As Aaron had predicted, Sophia's initial response was aggressive. She hired a high-profile divorce attorney known for securing substantial settlements for spouses of professional athletes. Her first demand was for half of all my career earnings, including future fight purses, claiming she had been instrumental in my success. Meanwhile, rumors about the real story behind the fight began circulating in MMA forums and social media. Someone, I suspect one of Sophia's friends who had known about the affair, leaked portions of the story, to a popular fighting podcast. Within days, the narrative had spread throughout the fighting community. Jake disappeared from public view immediately after the loss. He pulled out of his next scheduled bout citing injuries from our fight, though many speculated the real reason was the humiliation of having the affair exposed. His social media accounts went dark, except for a brief generic statement about taking time to reassess his career path. I decided to take some time away from fighting as well, though for different reasons. The emotional roller coaster of the past month had left me mentally exhausted. My body needed recovery time from the fight, but my mind needed even more healing. I declined several offers for quick turnaround bouts, despite the suddenly increased interest in me from promoters looking to capitalize on the personal drama. 3 weeks after the fight, Sophia made her first attempt at reconciliation. A massive bouquet of flowers arrived at the gym, with a card expressing regret and asking for another chance. I donated the flowers to a nearby nursing home and did not respond to the message. 2 days later, she showed up at the gym during my training session, asking to speak privately. I declined, suggesting any communication should go through our attorneys. As the divorce proceedings continued, I discovered who my true friends were. Some mutual acquaintances chose sides immediately, with most of the men supporting me, and surprisingly, many of the women who had known about the affair also taking my side, perhaps out of guilt for not having said something sooner. Others tried to remain neutral, offering platitudes about how these things are always complicated. 3 months after the fight, my life had begun to find a new rhythm. The championship belt hung in my home gym, a reminder not just of athletic achievement but of personal resilience. I had moved from our house into a spacious apartment, closer to downtown, removing myself from the memories that lingered in every corner of the home Sophia and I had shared. My attorney had managed to negotiate a settlement that protected the majority of my assets, using the evidence of Sophia's infidelity and financial misconduct as leverage. She received a lump sum that was significant, but far less than the half she had initially demanded. As my professional stock rose following the victory over Jake, Sophia's desperation seemed to grow proportionally. Her attempts at reconciliation became increasingly public and dramatic. One evening, she appeared outside a restaurant where I was having dinner with friends, literally falling to her knees in the parking lot, begging for forgiveness, as onlookers recorded the scene with their phones. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me," she sobbed as my friends formed a protective circle around me, leading me to my car. "I threw it all away for nothing. Please, Virgil, please give me another chance." I drove away without responding, but the incident forced me to reflect on our relationship in ways I had been avoiding. With the clarity of distance, I began to recognize the fundamental flaws that had existed long before Jake Harrison entered the picture. Sophia had always needed external validation, had always measured her worth through the eyes of others. And I focused almost entirely on my fighting career, had often left an emotional vacancy she sought to fill elsewhere. This realization didn't excuse her actions, but helped me understand them. It also helped me understand my own role in the breakdown of our marriage, my own blindness to warning signs that had been present for years. 6 months after the fight, with the divorce finalized and my next title defense scheduled, Sophia requested a meeting. Against my attorney's advice, I agreed to see her one last time, choosing a public coffee shop to avoid any potential scene. She looked different, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes partially concealed by makeup. When she spoke, the desperate edge that had characterized our recent interactions was gone, replaced by a quiet resignation. "I want to apologize," she said. "Not for another chance or to change your mind, but because you deserve to hear it. What I did was unforgivable. The lies, the betrayal, the way I tried to blame you afterward, all of it. You deserved better." I listened, without interrupting, feeling a strange sense of closure beginning to form. "Jake meant nothing to me," she continued. "He was exciting because he was forbidden, because he pursued me so aggressively. But it was empty, all of it. I threw away something real for something that was smoke and mirrors." "I appreciate your apology," I said when she finished. "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, Sophia. I truly do. But it cannot be with me." She nodded, wiping away a tear. "I know. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I lost, and I'm sorry. As we parted ways likely for the last time, I felt a weight lifting, not just the burden of anger I had carried, but also the responsibility I had felt for her happiness. We had both made mistakes, though, of vastly different magnitudes. Now we both had the freedom to learn from them. The months of emotional turmoil had changed me both as a fighter and as a person. In the gym, I approached training with a newfound intensity, no longer fighting just for titles or recognition, but as a form of personal expression and growth. Outside the gym, I began to open myself to new relationships, cautiously at first. Then, with increasing confidence, I started seeing someone new, Hannah, a physical therapist who worked with athletes and understood the demands of my profession. Unlike my relationship with Sophia, this one developed slowly, built on honest communication and mutual respect. I was careful not to compare them, recognizing that would be unfair to both women. Looking back at everything that happened, I realized that the betrayal, as painful as it was, had ultimately made me stronger. It forced me to confront weaknesses in myself I had ignored. My tendency to be emotionally unavailable, my habit of burying difficult feelings beneath work, and training my willingness to overlook problems rather than address them directly. 6 months after defeating Jake Harrison, I successfully defended my championship against a veteran contender, cementing my position at the top of the division. In interviews afterward, when reporters inevitably asked about the personal drama surrounding the Harrison fight, I declined to revisit the details, stating simply that life sometimes presents challenges that either break us or make us stronger. I chose to be stronger. I chose to learn from the pain rather than be defined by it. I chose to find a way forward rather than remain trapped in the past. And in doing so, I discovered a truth that no championship belt could teach me. That true victory has nothing to do with defeating others, but everything to do with refusing to let betrayal define your future. So I want to ask you, have you ever had to rebuild your life after a betrayal? How did you find the strength to move forward? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that like button if this story resonated with you, and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences that remind us all that our greatest victories often come after our most painful defeats. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes losing what you thought you wanted opens the door to finding what you truly need.